about something that might interest you? Hello, Liam here, Rock Paper Shotgun's Resident Evil liker, and Capcom have just sent us 17 minutes of brand new footage for Resident Evil Remake. I love Resident Evil, but I have a particular fondness for Resident Evil 4. No matter where I am in my house, I'm always within arm's reach of multiple copies of the game, and to be honest, I'm actually playing it right now as I record this video because I'm bad at my job. We've been given an extended look at an early section of the game, basically after you fight the big fish monster, the opening moments of the castle, meeting Ramon Salazar for the first time, the first Garrador fight, and your first encounter with Krauser. Because it's me and I've done very little with my life except either play or think about Resident Evil 4, I've spent the best part of a day watching this footage repeatedly to pull out as many bits of information as I can. New information, things you might have missed, or maybe just a couple of Easter eggs that hint towards other parts of the game. It's probably worth mentioning before we start that this video is going to contain some spoilers because I'm going to be talking about the original game. Anyway, I've got a lot to cover here, so let's dive in. As we already know from previous trailers, this footage confirms that parts of the game, mainly set pieces, are exactly the same as they were in the original. The castle intro, for instance, you approach, there's all these catapult lads, they're chucking big balls of hot goo towards you. You need to take out the catapults and raise a cannon to blast through a door to enter the castle proper. This looks exactly the same. Even the layout of this section looks identical. You can, however, move the cannon and shoot monks with it, which is pretty cool actually. But on that note, some parts of the game are also completely reimagined. For instance, the start of this footage takes place directly after the Del Lago fight. That's the big fish boss in the lake. In the original game, after the Del Lago fight, you collapse in a shack because you're super infected. You progress through a very small river section, you go underneath a waterfall, you find the key for the church, then you jump on a boat and head back to the merchant. This footage confirms that you sort of do the same thing here, but actually this section has been expanded quite a bit. It looks like there's a couple of different caves to explore here, and you can access them by jumping on the boat and moving around a sort of semi-open section. I don't know how big this is, but it definitely looks more fleshed out than it was in the original game. There appears to be at least 2 puzzle doors with this weird dial that you can press to access areas. Also, one bit that really caught my eye was this section looks a lot, to me, like the merchant's house in the original game, which you can access by skipping across the river to find on the other end. Except it doesn't look like the merchant is here. Instead, there's a puzzle blocking the door, Leon goes upstairs and can't get through a locked gate, and behind that puzzle door is like a statue of an owl with a man's face? What the hell is that about? Continuing this thread of things that are different and not different, some things are sort of the same, such as this bit, which is the merchant shop next to the El Gigante boss room. It's slightly changed. There are some animal heads mounted on the wall, his shop's on a higher level. Even these basic rooms have been slightly reimagined, which is quite exciting. Also, you can see from this one scene that the castle is physically closer to the starter village than it was in the original game. That's it. That's a point I noticed and got excited about. How sad's that? We already sort of knew this from trailers and stuff, but characters are way more fleshed out here than they were in the original. The merchant shouts at you when you head towards him.
I've got some new items in stock.
He comments on stuff you're buying or upgrading. Leon is more reactive to things that are happening to him during gameplay.
What is this place?
He's also as quippy as he was in the original, which personally I'm really happy to see.
I guess this is their idea of a warm welcome.
Also, him and Ashley chat to each other during gameplay, like outside of cutscenes, which is actually quite a big change. Also, Ashley will react to the horrible things that are happening instead of just screaming, which I think adds a lot of texture. In the original game, there was 1 sub-activity, I guess 2 if you count the shooting range, but the main in-game sub-activity was that the merchant would tell you to shoot some blue medallions in exchange for a sort of average gun. And it was always a bit weird that there was nothing else to that. But they've changed that, because now the merchant will give you multiple side quests, or requests I think as they're referred to in game. The merchant will leave pieces of paper around the world, such as this one, in which he asks you to find a golden egg in exchange for 3 spinels. He's been really weird about what he's going to do with that egg. I assume he's going to kiss it. Also, there are blue medallions in the castle now, which is also interesting. I wonder if blue medallions will be in the whole game now, and the more you shoot, the better rewards you get, rather than it just being the Punisher. We've also heard some of the game's music, which is really, really cool. When Leon is buying stuff from the merchant, we can hear what sounds to me like a new version of the safe room theme.
cut through the crowd with that right there.
And there's also a new version of the typewriter theme. The treasure system makes a return, which is fun. The game will now tell you how much money the item is worth originally, and how much more of a bonus you'll get for putting gems into it and completing it. Let's talk the inventory, because we are really diving in deep here. There's a new gun called the Bolt Thrower, which is basically a crossbow that fires bolts, but you can also attach mines to them. So I wonder if this is replacing the mine thrower. Also, I think this confirms that there's going to be different ammo types. We can see Leon using it later on in the footage here, and it looks really cool. Exciting to think that we might get either new weapons or reimagined ones. Now, this is a really big change from the original, but this footage confirms that the storage box is making its return. You can access it via the typewriter, and it doesn't look like it has an item limit. It shows you how many slots an item takes up in your attaché case, which is pretty neat. This is a substantial change, because in the original game, part of the challenge was balancing your inventory to make sure you were well equipped to deal with whatever the game was throwing at you. But you had a limited amount of space. Gaining the ability to store items feels like it might make the game a little easier, but I imagine they've added this because of the new crafting system. Your case is going to be crammed full of crafting materials like these, so I reckon you'll still be playing inventory Tetris like in the original. You can't access this storage box at any time, right? You have to be at a typewriter, so it's going to be interesting. Different, but potentially interesting. You can customize your attaché case. They swap to a metal one here instead of a black one, and cases seem to have perks. So this one increases pickup rates for ammo, while the other increases the drop rate of resources. On a similar note, charms are a thing. We already knew they were from the pre-order pages, but this footage confirms that they both attach to your attaché case, and they provide you with gameplay bonuses. So this chicken charm is apparently rare and gives you 100% health recovery when eating eggs. Now, I'm really interested as to whether or not these charms are going to play a big role the first time you play through the game, or whether or not they're going to give you modified experiences on your second playthrough, or, and this might be the most likely scenario, these things are mainly made for mercenaries, so you can mix and match charms and cases to try and get a high score in that mode. That makes sense. You can wobble the charms around in the inventory screen though, which is quite cool. There are some changes to the way that you can control Ashley.
Give me space!
Okay.
It seems that instead of telling her to wait, you can now ask her to give you space instead. It looks like when you say this order, she runs away, basically, and tries to get to safety, so you can fight the enemies and she doesn't get in the way, which is actually makes way more sense. The castle now has female monks, which adds a bit of additional enemy variety. Combat still looks largely the same as we've seen elsewhere, but I did notice a few things in this footage. You can still suplex, which is exciting, but Leon has also gained the ability to melee attack enemies once they've popped a big dribbly Plagas out of their head. That's new and very useful. Speaking of useful, you can now parry Plagas attacks with your knife, which is a pretty big change. That should prevent those irritating one-hit kills in the castle. You can shoot the limbs off an enemy, but it does look like this only happens with powerful weapons like the shotgun. The first Garrador fight has changed, the prison has been greatly expanded into a dungeon, and although it looks largely the same, there are no bells. Have they removed the bells? And finally, we see a little bit of your encounter with Jack Krauser. The QuickTime event stuffed cutscene has been replaced with an actual fight, which is pretty cool. It looks like you'll be parrying a lot of Krauser's knife attacks, although it is a bit of a shame that you can't do the wild flips from the original game because it's not in a cutscene anymore. Interestingly, and this is a bit of a deep cut, but Krauser mentions Operation Javier, which is the mission both he and Leon are assigned to 2 years before the events of Resident Evil 4. This is a reference to a mission in Wii... I can't even say it. This is a reference to the Wii game Resident Evil Darkside Chronicles, where you fight this thing, which I guess means that canonically this happened. Which is, I love this. Thank you for referencing this, Capcom. It's so dumb. Darkside Chronicles Remake when? Alright, that's everything I noticed. If you spotted anything else from this footage, then please do let me know in the comments below. For all your Resident Evil 4 Remake needs, make sure to check out rockpapershotgun.com. Please give this video a like, and I'll be back very soon with more daft videos about computer games. Bye for now.